So hunt groups. The big question usually is, when do we use these and what are the limitations on hunt groups? So you have two options as far as different call groups inside the ShoreTel system for most, non-ECC customers. You have work groups and you have hunt groups. And they offer some of the same features. The nice thing that hunt groups, the big thing that hunt groups, or big thing that they do that work groups don't do, is that they live on a switch. So you have a ShoreTel switch that controls your call. So call comes into a PRI or an analog line. It hands the call off to another short gear switch, which can handle the work group, which then can present the call to an end user's IP phone. The advantage of using that is if you have any Windows Server issues or WAN issues, the hunt group stays up because it's on a short gear switch. So we have some redundancy capabilities that we can use hunt groups for. A lot of customers will use hunt groups to back up a work group or an ECC group. So if you have a server problem, we can fail the call back over to a switch-based hunt group and still at least get the calls answered for your customers. So that's probably the primary number one reason for use of hunt groups. The other use is operator calls, small departments where you just want to ring a few phones simultaneous. One of the big things that the hunt group does not include is a voicemail box, where a work group does. So users who want to use a hunt group for like an operator or a small department, we can still use a voicemail box on one of the servers. We just simply ring the number of times that we set the hunt group up for, and we route the call over to a voicemail box afterwards. So we don't lose that capability really. The other limitation on a hunt group over work group is the ring patterns. So we support simultaneous ring or top-down. Those are the only two options that we do support on the ring pattern. Simultaneous ring is the most common. It's also the most resource intensive on a short gear switch. If we have 16 people in a hunt group on simultaneous ring and a few calls come into that, we're stacking 16 calls on that hunt group, ringing out to everybody. And then that one gets answered, the next one comes in, we're now ringing 15. So it's very processor intensive on the short gear switches, and that's the big limitation on as far as hunt groups in the ShoreTel system come, is that we have a limitation of 8 hunt groups per short gear switch. And even though we can put 8 hunt groups on a switch, the ShoreTel only recommends a total of 16 people in those 8 hunt groups on each switch. So if we did have 8 hunt groups on a switch, in order to stay within that boundary, you could only have 2 people in each of your hunt groups before you hit your 16 people. So load balancing of your switches with your hunt groups is very important. As you can see on the screen on the bottom here, I took a picture of the hunt groups, and you can see that it does list which switch and the number of members. So as you go inside your Shoreware Director and look at your call control and go to hunt groups, you can kind of see which switches they're assigned to. The only key thing you want to look at when you're assigning which switch a hunt group belongs to is preferably you want to keep that hunt group assigned to a switch at the same location, because it doesn't do us any good for redundancy purposes if a hunt group for Portland is assigned to a switch in Seattle. If we lose connection to Seattle, we're not able to route calls using that hunt group because we no longer have access to that Seattle switch, which is controlling the hunt group. So you do want to keep them geographically located the same, but if you have multiple switches at a location, you want to load balance between. So you can see in this case, we have 2 switches that I'm utilizing, and I put all of them on the short gear 50, and then I put my big support backup onto my 50V because that switch there, that hunt group has 12 members in it. So my support backup that has 12 members is used as a backup, for our ECC and work group capabilities for our support team. So if we lose our server capability, we can back up to a hunt group and still simultaneous ring, those 12 phones and get calls answered, from our customers. So that's the big kind of keys, reasons to use it or, not use hunt groups. Now we're going to kind of talk about your configuration options that we get with hunt groups. So like I mentioned, if you're in Shoreware Director, you go to call control. That's kind of where your hunt groups are hidden there. It's a little bit hidden compared to some of the other features. We don't have a limitation as far as, for most of our customers, the number of hunt groups. I think there is a limitation of like 254 hunt groups. We don't have any customers using, anywhere close to that. So you can build hunt groups for testing. You can build it for your IT teams, for your accounting teams, all the different teams. The key things you want to, consider when you're building a hunt group is the backup extension. So you'll see on the screen there, it's set. The backup extension is useful if, for some reason, the call that's coming in from a PRI or an analog line can't get to the switch that's controlling this hunt group. If it can't get to this switch that's controlling the hunt group, the system has a routing table on all the switches that can say, oh, well, I know what the backup extension is for this customer service hunt group, and I'm just going to route the call to that one user. We can also use another hunt group as a backup if you wanted. If you wanted to put hunt groups on 2 different switches and use them as backup to each other, that would be another use for a backup extension. So that's important to know, is in a fail scenario on that switch, where do we want to route the calls to this hunt group? The next important thing is the switch assignment. And you'll see I highlighted that just so you can kind of notice that. It's a drop-down list. It will allow you to select any ShoreGear switch in your system that can take hunt groups. So the ones that can't take hunt groups are your T1Ks. They just handle PRIs. They don't have any capabilities to handle hunt groups. But your ShoreGear 30s, your 50s, your 90s, your older switches like your 40s, 60s, 120s, they'll all take them. Even a 24A, which is a strictly analog switch, can host hunt groups. So if you have any of those analog switches, you can use those for load balancing of your hunt groups. The one nice thing is ShoreTel is just released a new line of ShoreGear switches for the Connect platform. Your current switches are fully compatible in the new Connect platform, but one advantage of the new ShoreTel switches is that they double the capability of hunt groups. So as you're looking to expand, to new offices or anything down the road, talk with your sales rep and look at seeing if one of the new switches might make sense, because you do get some additional resources for hunt groups on the new model switches. They were able to put more memory, more processing power into the new model switches to help customers handle more hunt group capacity. The next thing we want to talk about is the call stack. So call stack is the number of concurrent calls that we're going to allow this hunt group to take. You'll see that it's 8. And 8 in a lot of cases is a lot. Still, we're going to allow 8 calls to simultaneously be in this hunt group waiting to get answered. So one unique thing about hunt groups that like work groups and ECC doesn't do is hunt groups do call waiting. So if an operator is on the phone and a call comes into the customer service hunt group, they're going to get a second call waiting call beeping in and giving them the caller ID on their software and their phone, letting them know that, oh, I have a call, a second call. Maybe I should either put the first call on hold or try to wrap up the first call because I have a second call coming in. So would you really want to allow 8 at a time? Maybe not. That might be a little bit, a little bit much. But the system does support a call stack depth of up to 16. Most customers are using anywhere from 2 to 8, just depending on how many calls they want to allow, and depending on how many people are taking calls for this customer service group. If you had 8 or 10 people taking calls, we can support a bigger call stack depth. The next one is our distribution pattern, like we talked about earlier, is we have simultaneous or top-down. Obviously, top-down is going to always send the call to the first person, and then it'll work its way down. If the first person's on the phone, then it'll ring to the second person. If the top 2 on the phone, it'll ring to the third. Most of our customers using hunt groups will use the simultaneous. Your rings per member and your no answer number of rings, if you're simultaneous, they should be matched. They should match because we're going to ring, all the agents the same number of times, and then our no answer would tell us how many calls before we go to voicemail, or we go to our next destination if it's an auto attendant or another hunt group or something like that. That's what our no answer is going to tell us. If we're using top-down, the rings per member is how many call or rings are we going to give the first person to answer before we go, we start working down the line. Usually that'll be 2 to 3 rings. Most customers prefer not to go above 3 rings so that you can, try a number of users before we send it to our no answer number of rings. As I scroll down the screen, if you were to look, look in your Shoreware Director, it's just one big long screen, my 2 screenshots. We have our options of calling members when they're forwarding calls. So if you're forwarding calls to your cell phone or to another user, do you want to allow the hunt group to, to follow that call routing decision? Skip member if already on a call. So some users who don't want that call waiting feature that I talked about, if somebody's already on the phone, we can just, we can skip that person, not ring in the call waiting. Most of our customers enjoy the call waiting capability of a hunt group, and that's a lot of reasons why they're using a hunt group, is so they can use that call waiting capability that is offered inside of a hunt group. So now we have our call forwarding, options here. We have our call stack full, so if there's a 9th call that comes in, what do we want to do with the call? In this case, we're going to send it to a voicemail box because we figure 8 calls is enough for the customer service hunt group to handle at a time. Our no answer after 4 rings, we're going to send the call to a voicemail box, for the customer service group. That could also be an auto attendant, like I mentioned, or another, another hunt group as your no answer destination. Your hunt group allows you to apply your on-hour schedules, so we can pick any schedule that's set up in your system and turn on and off the hunt group calling. We can also select a holiday schedule, to be used. One thing you'll notice if you're familiar with work groups that's different is you don't see a custom schedule option. Inside of a hunt group or a work group, you can use a custom schedule for a bad, a bad weather day, or a team meeting or something like that where you're just closing down for a few hours. So that's the one thing you can't do with the hunt group, is you can't do custom schedules. If we needed to apply a custom schedule, we'd have to put like a route point in front, or an auto attendant in front of the hunt group, and then send the call on to the hunt group instead. And then you'll have your off hours holiday destination. So when it's off hours or it is a holiday, where do you want to send it? In most cases, a lot of people will send that to an auto attendant, so that way they can play an auto attendant message to the customers after hours or on holidays, giving them an option to dial by name or leave a message. In this case, we're just sending it to a voicemail box because they've already came from an auto attendant to get to this to this hunt group. You do see the current call handling mode. That's just a live entry field, just telling you what's the current status of this call handling, or this hunt group. Is it on hours, off hours, or is it on holiday? And then on the bottom is where you can select your different hunt group members. So like the previous slide said, you can put up to 16 people into a simultaneous ring. If you can go up to 20 users if you're doing a top down, and ring each of them a couple of times, or if somebody's already on a line, you could skip them. Most hunt groups are used between 4 and 8 people. So if you're doing a lot more than that, most people will move to a work group or to ECC, for some kind of a queuing capability inside of those systems.